Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of our Theros set review. Today, we're going to talk about the blue cards.
Some of the multicolor. I'm Brad Nelson. I don't know. What are you trying to do right now?
Dude, my flow! I've got a flow. I got a flow, and you screwed it up.
Well, my entire career has been based on breaking flow, so that's good.
So, we are talking about the blue cards today. This is Brad Nelson. I am Evan Irwin. You ready to talk about some Theros?
And we're tapping the cards.
Wait a minute, dude.
No. Oh. I'm
Flow,
so sorry.
man, the flow. You screwed up my flow, dude. All right, a null. Originally printed in Urza's Saga, I think it was. Urza's, the first Urza set, whatever that one was, the one with the gears. Because there's Legacy.
That's how I do Urza's too. I just like the one with the gear,
You know,
the hammer.
Yeah, the gears, the hammer, the vial. I don't know, whatever. But that was the original enchantment block. This is the new enchantment block. I love that these types of cards exist because they're sort of anathema to the entire set, and they're necessary. In that
I
regard.
don't, because I like artifacts, and I don't like them getting countered.
Oh, artifacts, whatever. This is about enchantments.
Yep.
We're only talking about enchantments, not your trading post, even though it counters your trading post. Could very well be a standard all-star, depending on how well adopted the gods are or the enchantments that sort of go along with them. But remains a really interesting card for both constructed and limited.
It's a good way for blue to actually deal with bestow, and I think that's one of the reasons that this card exists. Because like, if you bestow on something and like other decks can go kill, and they're fine, right? They can get rid of both of them. But if it's blue, it's like bounce, but you get it back and then you get to play it, and that's really bad for me.
Yeah, I got to be able to counter it. Plus, being able to counter for just 1 mana. I mean, a 1 mana answer to literally every god in the set, all the bestow creatures. Like, this is a really good card. As much as I would want to main deck the white one that we talked about, the white disenchant, the Ray of something, the annul here I think is actually more main deckable in your blue decks because you're almost always going to get some value out of it, and it's super cheap.
I think it's the opposite. I would much rather play I play the card that if I tapped out, I can still deal with something, whereas annul, if you tap out and they play their spell, it does nothing in your hand.
True. I mean, it does nothing from that point, and that's sort of the problem with blue's reactive spells anyway. But again, being able to sort of have an extra mana, being able to bluff this card is actually going to be big in premier level play. You know, do they have the annul? Do they not have the annul? Do they use it already? Do they have 2 of them? You know, that type of thing is going to go back and forth. But ultimately, I really like the fact that it just exists in Theros.
Yes, no, I mean, it's going to be a card that is going to see a lot of sideboard play, like you're actually going to use it. You're going to want to pick up one in your blue decks. Like, when you get back to, like, you know, down to, like, 6 cards in your draft pack and you see it, it's like you're probably going to want to take it.
True. It's not something you're going to first pick or even pick early, but you're going to be able to get them late, and they're going to be real all-stars when they hit.
Or you're going to hate them when you hit your, like, really good, like,
when you get, like,
bestow cards.
Yeah, the Whip of Erebos or something, and you're going to get some really sweet bestows, and you're like, I don't want to play against this card, and you hate it appropriately. Aqueous Form. Actually really sweet. Is it just me, or I think this card is actually really sick? Like, in limited, it's actually surprisingly powerful for me.
It could be good. I love that it has scry on it, so you get a little bit of value if it dies. The ability to make things unblockable is very good. There's also a couple hexproof creatures. There's one really big hexproof card in blue already that's common.
Yep.
I think this is going to see some limited play when you're trying to hit your heroic, and if your opponent doesn't have a lot of removal, like if you play against like a green-white deck, or even more based green strategies, you might want to board this in just to try to get some pressure on them. But at the same time, it's just an enchant creature that doesn't draw you cards. Scry 1 is not draw a card, close to at all.
It's not draw a card, but what I liked about it was that A, it's good for the creature, being just unblockable, or, you know, nowadays can't be blocked. But the idea of you just getting like constant value out of your attacks that can't be blocked, that for me is what is impressive to me. Anything with evasion or any like big fatty that you don't feel they can deal with immediately, you just slap this thing on, hit them, start looking at your next card, hit them, start looking at your next card. It just provides you more advantage than just being unblockable.
Yeah, I mean, and the last thing I'll say about the card is it's not something that I will like actively want to play with, but I know that it's something that I will be concerned about. So it's like on that cusp of good, but just not what I'm looking for in my limited decks.
I agree. I really feel it's on the cusp. It's on the verge. It's not a real main deckable card, unfortunately, but I like it. I just think it's a really cool card. I think they pushed it in the right way to make you either put it as a 23rd card or really consider it heavily in ways that you just be like, oh, 1 blue enchant creature is unblockable. This card's crap, you know? Adding scry to it made it really interesting. Artisan of Forms is no phantasmal image.
And it's no clone or Phyrexian Metamorph or Evil Twin. It's actually just kind of weird.
It actually just kind of dies.
And it's a human when I think it should be. It looks like a fairy to me. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's kind of a trickster.
She's tricky. I mean, this also more or less has the keyword dies in that whenever you want it to do something, and it doesn't just die immediately like Daxos. This dies later when you actually trigger it. And, you know, they'll be like, I'm going to play something sweet. And they're going to be like, all right, sweet, I want to whatever my artisan forms. And you're like, all right, kill your 1/1.
Yeah.
You know, like, it is a triggered ability. It's not a into the battlefield as a thing. It's not a whenever. It's not something that gets around the trigger. It's going to go on the stack, and then you're going to have a 1/1 that's just hanging out there, ready to die.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that it is a cheap clone that you can do some combat tricks with. Like, if they don't have removal, if they don't have removal, this card is insane.
As most creatures generally are.
Not only do you get to make a clone or become something that's on play, but it gets that bonus that you just gave it.
Right.
And it can do some really cool things, but for the most part, it is a bad heroic card.
Yeah, it's just not, and it's weird, you know, like one of the bad heroic cards is actually a rare blue card, but, you know, something's got to be. You can see why they made it so low cost.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be fine and limited. I'm not saying don't play it, because if you have enough ways to trigger it, especially if you have cantrips that draw cards, it can do cool things, and I love that it gains the ability so you can, like, keep copying. But as we've seen cards that say, like, I think there's a good rule that says if it gains this ability, therefore it's not good, because all of them are bad. None of them have ever been good.
Anything that ever had the on the end of it and gains this ability was just not that good at all ever.
Nope.
Because he requires so many hoops. Meh. You still want to play it limited, because even if it just dies, even if it just grabs that removal, that's okay. Yeah. Because if it doesn't, and you untap with it, and you play some more deal, and you copy your 3/3 flyer, your 3/4 flyer, which there are some in here we'll look at, I mean, that's really powerful. No doubt about it.
Well, I'm going to go with God. What happens when you copy a God, but you don't have the devotion? I don't even know the rule on that.
What? Well, you copy a God, it's a legendary perm, you have to sack one of them. If it's your own.
No,
if you copy their God, you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you copied their God, but then it doesn't become a creature anymore. Does it stay that? Does it stay where it's at?
Oh, man, my brain melted. I don't know. Benthic Giant. Speaking of the hexproof guys, you can put that one, you know, that one.
This card is very good. All right, so blue never gets big creatures. It never has these monstrous creatures.
It does, but without the drawback.
Yeah, they always have a drawback, or they're, like, just a little bit too weak. But, like, 6 mana for a 4/5 hexproof in a format with Bestow and other enchantments, like, that's big. And giving the big hexproof common to blue is really cool in this set.
It's really sweet. They've really pushed common blue things, where common blue fatties is the best way to put it. Where, you know, back in the day, you would have to pay infinite blue mana symbols and a whole bunch of mana and have island walk, and you'd have to control an island, and they'd have to control an island, and blah, 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 and it was crap. Now it's not crap. Now they've given potentially the best hexproof, you know, monster in the entire set. I don't even know how many there are, for that matter.
I think this might be it.
There might be
one more.
There's a couple more, maybe one more. Regardless, it's really good. It does what you want to do. In a set full of enchantments and making creatures scary, you want the one they can't target.
Yep.
It's actually easily splashable. This card's really sweet.
And the sweet thing about the card, too, is, like, if you just need a creature to block for a turn in limited, this is a great answer. It's like, a lot of times, if you're behind, you're just trying to, like, play your guys, but they're tempoing you out.
Right.
With the cards like Griptide and things like that. Like, you at least know if you cast this, it will be able to block.
Right.
Unless they get flying or unblockable or something. But
or unless they give evasion. But in terms of on the ground, when you need a dude, guy is sweet. You're not going to play a ton of him in limited, particularly draft, because he's so expensive. But he is really good in the enchantment block with a bunch of enchant creature effects.
Yeah, especially if they bring out contested cliffs later.
I don't think so.
I'm just waiting for that dream to happen.
Good luck with that. Bident of Thassa used to be Coastal Piracy. Coastal Piracy was a 2 blue, 2 colorless enchantment that had that first ability on it as you read it. And then they gave it the second ability, the Goblin Diplomat's ability, and made it the weapon of Thassa.
All right, so I'm going to flavor rule right here.
Oh, here we go.
It's most of my ignorance. What is a Bident?
Flavor.
What is
weird.
A Bident?
Okay, here we go. All right, this is a really good lesson.
Because it's not a Trident?
No, right.
Because
Trident has...
so it's a Bident. Is
that a bicycle has how many wheels?
2. And
a tricycle.
So is there an actual thing as a Bident?
Apparently it's a Bident.
What's a spear then?
A spear only has 1.
But is Bident a real word, though? Is that a magic word?
Yes, it's a real word.
Okay, because I never heard it before. All right.
Well, it is really rare. No one ever uses it. Everyone has tridents, not Bidents. There's lots of cool jokes you can make in there. You know, the Joe Bident of Thassa or whatever. But yeah, it's fun. As a limited card, I don't think it's going anywhere in constructed. As a limited card, I think it's very powerful.
It's really powerful. Goblin Diplomats was one of the only 2-drops you could like play in that format that was good because it had an ability. And this doesn't die to removal, and it can like when you have a board style, you can force your opponent to attack, and you can block a lot of things, or you can attack. Like I love that you get upsides to being offensive and defensive.
Yeah.
Like
it gives you the best of both worlds essentially. Yep. If you have 1, 2-drop, 3-drop this thing, and you get through and you draw a bunch of cards, you draw like 2 cards off those guys.
You're probably going to start drawing more cards because of it.
Yeah, then you're probably just going to be winning the game shortly thereafter. And even if you just have one evasive guy, play the Biden, attack with him, draw a card, say go. When you untap, like all the control is you, because you control combat, you control if you're going to draw cards or not, you control if they're going to attack in, if you're going to play a big guy and then use the ability to make them attack into the big guy, like. There's a ton of power in this card.
Yeah, it's a limited all-star. Like this is also a fun card. Like I think this is a very like when you get to play with this, you're gonna remember the days you got to play with this. Like this isn't a boring big old fatty that's good. It's like you know what, I won a game of Magic because I opened Wormcoil Engine. It wasn't really fun or interesting, but I got it.
But I destroyed them. Sure.
Yeah, but this card is gonna have fun, interactive games. It just breathes that, and I can't wait to open this tomorrow at midnight, and if I don't open one, I'm just going to take one from someone.
It's really like, thanks.
Yeah, it's the card I want to play with the most.
It's totally sweet. Breaching Hippocamp. What?
Well, that makes a lot of sense. There's no flavor problem there.
It's just like they told the artist, like, just make something up.
Yeah.
Just make it horsey with gully wing things.
Yeah, I mean... all I gotta say about like the flavor of this card is if my parents made me go to a camp, what better camp would be than Hippo Camp?
Dude, it's a horsefish. It's literally creature type horsefish. I don't even know what to say. Well, I will say it is an absolutely playable card in limited. It is very good in limited. It's going to surprise. Like the element of surprise is what blue has normally at its is the best at in limited, and this guy really personifies that. Weird, insane picture and silly name aside.
I mean, yeah, I definitely just think that they just took Evolve off this card, gave it Flash, and pushed it for a couple of years. They're like, too many Evolve cards.
Yeah.
It does look like it would be an Evolve card.
It does have a higher, power.
It's like the name's weird. It's a horsefish. It's like a 3/2 for 4.
It does feel like something that kind of escaped the Simic lab and kind of like went over to Theros until we found it. It's weird. But ultimately, it's not something I think you pick super highly, but it is a really good blue card. It's something that you're absolutely going to run in sealed because you're going to surprise everyone. It is splashable. It does have Flash. It can let you untap and double block. Like, there's a ton of play in this card.
Oh, a significant amount of play. I think this is going to be a very powerful card to have in limited. And mostly just, like, I think it will get worse as the format evolves, but right now it's unbelievably good. It's so good. You can take it, like, first through 5 and feel fine with it because it's going to do some awesome. Well, don't take it first over awesome cards. But if all your uncommons are just like heroic challenges and stuff like that, like take it.
It's fine. It's a very good card. Coastline Chimera, one of the first that we've seen here with. We saw some, of course, in white with the black activation. Here's a blue card with a white activation. They're trying to mix the colors up a little bit. It's going to get more interesting when there's multicolored gods and multicolored things happening later on in Theros.
Now, why can you activate this as many times as you want? Now, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you can block an additional 99 guys, but a thing with 2 heads can block as many too with an unlimited mana. That makes no sense to me. It baffles me.
A lion and a goat flying, cool, but just blocking too many things.
It doesn't make sense.
Flavor police.
Yes.
I don't know.
I mean, I think with the set reviews, I get to flavor police at least once in my life. That's what I do here. I like to be flavor police because, like, at the end of the day, it's a 1/5 flyer for 4, and it has a really bad ability. And what else do you want me to say about the card? Let's be honest. It's not that good.
It's not that good. You don't really want to play
Another Evolve card.
It's a 22nd, 23rd card at best. You and your Evolve cards. I don't know.
It's a goat lion. It's a 1/5.
It's a goat lion. It's a chimera. It's a creature type chimera, which I think is really cool. That's all I got. Don't play it. Crackling Triton. He's crackling. He's crackling good.
I do like that he has all the wisdom of a merfolk and a wizard, but just all the instability. That's a word?
Instability.
Instability of a goblin, and that's where his ability comes from. He just, like, you have to sacrifice him to deal 2 damage. So it's it's the most expensive burn and turn you've ever had.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, but ultimately, as not being a gray ogre, but actually being a 2/3. Gray ogres are 3 mana 2/2s. This is a 3 mana 2/3. that does have a really good ability, in limited, and not at constructed at all, but really good in limited, and is a good playable blue card. Even if you can't activate the ability, which you want to and you want to try to, even if you can't, it's not straight embarrassing. It is still fine on the curve.
Yeah, I mean, it's there to just help you in those early turns when your opponent is very aggressive. And, I mean, you're going to want to, this is one of the cards that you're definitely going to want to be both colors or just splashing red just to activate it, because dealing 2 damage to something at any time is a pretty good ability.
It is very powerful, absolutely. Curse of the Swine, also known as the Baconator.
And also known as my favorite card in the set by far.
Why? You make some piggies?
Well, for one,
Only
the
points.
tokens that it makes are the best tokens ever.
The tokens are amazing.
It allows me now, because the thing is when I win an invitational, which I will win an invitational, I get a token, which is probably one of the coolest prizes any tournament series has ever made ever. Because even though Jerry has a token, and Todd, Jerry, and I are so involved in Magic, we still talk about this like every trip, like what token are you gonna make? Like, it's like genius. Anyway.
Of course, it's brilliant.
Yeah,
but 2/2 green boar creature tokens.
Those pigs are the cutest, and I want to now be a pig. I was gonna be a goat, but now I'm gonna be a pig.
There you go.
Wait,
you're not gonna be a goat?
I should be a goat, but can I be a goat pig?
Well, you'd be more like a goat herder, and you'd be like next to the goat hanging out.
Well, actually, do you want to know what my picture would be if I'm a goat? This is what I want. This is what I want for my token. You guys can hear at home. I want to be a goat, and what I want is I want me to be my wall, my back against the wall, sitting on the ground with my like hooves, and I want to be eating a piece of bark, and the bark is part of the fence that I'm inside of at the trading post. And what I want on the sign to my fence is like $50 scratched off, $30 scratched off free. And on the right side, in the bottom right corner of the picture, I want Jerry on his knees begging someone to take me off his hands, and I want somebody like just going like, no. That's the picture. Can you visualize it?
He had all of this in his head. He had all of this ready to go. Like,
it's genius.
It wasn't just like he came up with it. Like, he had it planned.
Yeah, obviously.
Curse of the Swine is bad. Let's discuss why it's bad.
What?
It's bad in that if against an aggressive deck, if you are exiling a bunch of creatures, they go 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop. You go scry land into land, into land, into land, into Curse of Swine for what, 2, maybe 3? What are you going to be replacing? There are 2-1s with 2-2s? And then you're going to have to ratchet bomb them away?
Yes, exactly. You ratchet bomb them. That's awesome.
So you have to both ratchet bomb and put in mana into Curse of the Swine. So you 2-for-1 yourself, or you 2-for-1, or you 2 for nothing just to start off, and then ideally you getting rid of creatures in the meantime.
All right. So
while they're attacking you. Look, man, I've been fooled by one of these types of cards way too many times.
So as a rule in Magic, if there is a good Wrath of God, there will be good cards to interact with Wrath of God effects, like Voice of Resurgence, and Virals, and Lotleth Troll, and Scavenge Creatures, and others. Scavenging Ooze. Well, Scavenging Ooze will die to a Supreme Verdict, but like Scavenge Creatures and like all these annoying things that like you just want to exile. And you can do it at instant speed with quickens. Okay, sorry, I'm getting off topic.
Oh my God!
I'm getting off topic.
Oh,
but
I puked in my mouth a little.
These creatures are tough to deal with. And if you can just swine them and then ratchet bomb them, it's going to be a thing. I promise you, I'll make it a thing.
It's not a thing. I'm sorry. Card's bad.
Awesome. It's so good.
Not even that good in limited because you're going to be able to solve things and you're going to be able to give them guys. It's actually better in limited because cards,
well, this is a limited bomb.
In limited, it seems. Now that I think about it, it seems absolutely terrific because you're going to have a bunch of ground patterns to block these things. And you're able to like get rid of flyer, mythic bomb, god or whatever is going on over there. Is sweet, not in constructed.
Very much in constructed.
This is very much in constructed. This is the new premier counterspell for basically all the control decks. I don't know why you wouldn't run this. This card is sweet. People who are doubting it, I think, are totally incorrect. I think the spell is totally sweet.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that Dissolve is going to see a lot of play as the answer to mid-range strategies. Like, the thing about Standard right now, in my opinion, is the mid-range decks are going to have to play a lot of spot removal into, like, the creature base is not Thragtusk, Huntmaster, like that anymore, so they're going to be playing weaker creatures to control matchups, so you're going to have to play a lot of good cards like Rakdos Return, Sire of Insanity, Xanthros, like all of these cards. So Dissolve is going to be almost essential if you're going to be playing a blue-based control strategy, as well as like the scry for a control deck is way better than anywhere else, especially in the mid game. Like turn 1 Scryland is pretty blah because you don't know what you need yet. You've only seen 6
you
other
have to
cards.
formulate a plan.
Yeah, but like on turn 3 through 6, it's like, do I need a land or do I not need a land? That's for a fact. It's like if you see a Wrath of God on top or Supreme Verdict on top, you know if you need that or not. And that's like a card that either you want or you just don't want at all. You don't want it sitting in your hand.
And to give you that choice in a control deck is just incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to dissipate them and exile the creatures, but it's mainly another to give you the choice of I'm going to get rid of that, answer that, and then let me figure out what my next turn is going to be.
Yeah, there's really not that many cards right now too that like matter if they're in the graveyard or not. Like there's less.
I mean, Scavenging Ooze is kind of like puts in the umbrella on the format.
Scavenging Ooze, Scavenge Creatures, like maybe like Trading Post, for instance, like will be significantly upgraded since Dissipate is gone.
Right.
That's a really big thing actually, but I'm saying that not as a not going off on Trading Post. I'm just saying that is a real thing.
It's okay. He's averaging like 2 to 3 Trading Post, mentions per video. Fate Foretold is insanely sweet. Wow, I love this one. Of the cycle of the cantrip enchantments, this is my favorite.
I mean, it's
sweet.
fine. I like that it cantrips, but getting another cantrip out of it is pretty blah. Like you're just like you're like building your own Doom Traveler at this point.
Who doesn't like drawing cards?
I mean, I like drawing cards, but you're just building a Doom Traveler, right? Like you're building a creature that you want to die to get more value out of.
Because that card didn't win like infinite opens. Like, come on.
Okay, let's just.
This card isn't that good in constructed. Don't get me wrong.
No,
I was just talking
limited.
about Doom Traveler.
But
in limited, I thought this card was sweet.
For example, you play a guy, right?
Yeah.
You play the Fate Foretold onto it. You draw a card. Now you want that creature to die. You're even probably willing to chump block if it's that bad.
Well, in my Magical Christmas Land, I'm playing the 1/white 1/2 that has Heroic and put a +1/+1 counter on it. So I'm going to play that on turn 1. This on turn 2. Now it's a 2/3. I just drew a card. I'm feeling pretty good.
But now you don't want it to die.
Even if it does, I'm drawing a card off of it.
That is true.
Which is terrific.
I think of this as a very, like, disguised wild guess, in my opinion. Like, that's very disguised as a wild guess. It's better than wild guess, but it's like kind of like one.
That's a good way to think about it. Wild guess is 2 red, instant, discard a card, draw 2.
Yeah.
And this isn't quite that bad. I think particularly because Heroic makes this type of effect and these types of enchantments in this cycle way, way better than it would normally be.
I would have loved this card a lot more if it said when it dies, draw a card instead of its controller, because now you'll get the draw off the first draw no matter what you target, but the controller gets a second. I kind of like the idea of being able to enchant my opponent's creature and then kill it as well.
Sure.
So like I didn't like that it said you could.
That actually reads to me like very much a developer change.
It could have been an oversight too.
Possibly, but at the same time, it also feels like something was tacked in there because of that very scenario. I enchant your thing. When I got no board, I got no creatures on the board, I enchant your guy, and I draw a card. I kill your guy, and I draw a card.
I mean, what's the problem with that?
Well, there's no problem with it in a spike sense. There's just a problem with it that it's really powerful.
It's a Fate Foretold. It's like I'm enchanting your guy. You know what's going to happen to it. You know what's going to. She's in a pit waiting to die.
No constructed. How high do we pick this in limited?
14th, like when you just get it on your last pick.
I don't know about. I mean, I certainly wouldn't go near the first 3 or 4 picks. I would say yes. We wheel this card. You wheel it, but it's good.
Yeah.
Gainsay directly from Invasion, or was it Plane Shift? It was the one Plane Shift, the one with the swirly in the set symbol. That said, now we have a whole cycle of Gainsay-esque effects.
Yep.
And this one is the worst.
Yeah, it's by far the worst, mostly because the counters that they give us. Like I think like when Gainsay came out, Magic cards like this were like blah. Like they're fine, but like there weren't a lot of counter spells that did what Gainsay did back then too.
Sure.
Like right now in Standard, you have a lot of blue on blue hate cards already. Negate, Dispel.
Right.
I mean, you already have Dissolve. You have Essence Scatter. Like all these exist.
Sure.
So the only thing that I think Gainsay is better than Negate is that it counters Aetherling as well as all the other cards Negate counters. But for the most part, I think Negate is just a stronger card.
More or less. Or Dissolve. I mean, it's hard to say that you would ever play this over a Dissolve.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it kind of, it accompanies dissolve, and it accompanies maybe you negates and essence scatters. It's just you can't pick it over it. You know what I mean? This doesn't trump those cards.
No, and you're going to play all 4 dissolves in your 75, and then you're going to start touching on the negates because you need them to deal with the planeswalkers and everything else. But Gainsay doesn't counter Rakdos Return or Chandra. Like, it just doesn't do that. So, like, Gainsay being the card is kind of fine. I feel like they could have really pushed the blue-on-blue hate card to be, like, super good. Like, way better than Gainsay.
Like, just Gainsay draw a card?
Yes, I think that would have been awesome.
Of course.
I mean, come on. You know, everyone that doesn't like blue... Now, I'm actually starting to become a blue lover again.
Oh, now he is.
I am.
Right.
It wasn't good last set, and you know it. And everyone keeps arguing that Control wasn't dead, but how many were in the top 8 in the last 3 months? None. That's right.
Were none?
Like 1.
Okay.
Maybe 2. But...
I
I want to exist in a world where the blue cards are so good at fighting other blue cards that they cannibalize each other and they let us all live in good harmony.
Good luck with that.
Well, I would
Next
love
is Griptide, directly from Dark Ascension, I think it was.
Yes.
Dark Ascension was Griptide? Because this is the first time it's ever been reprinted. And it was normally the time ebb effect, where you would put it on top of their library. It was always sorcery speed. It was a blue and 2 colorless. This is a blue and 3 colorless for instant speed. It is a powerful trick. You are able to crush people. It is good.
I don't know if this was intentional, but I do like the fact that, like, so Magic is growing a ton right now. I bet a lot of you out there, this might be your first set review, and if it is, you should go watch our other ones because they're funny too. But Griptide is like evolution of Time Ebb, where you play with the sorceries in the core sets, and then you get the instants, and now you know what the effect does, but you get to develop how sorceries turn into instants.
Right,
and
it kind
I really
of
love that.
Yeah, it kind of shows you the evolution of a basic core set to an expert, sort of fall set, as it were, because things get more complicated, things happen in a faster pace, and tricks get better. And the trick got way better. Yeah,
for 1 extra mana, you get to play it at any time, which opens up the potential of, like, when you play with Time Ebb, most of the time it's just kind of like I want to bounce this creature, or if we're both in top deck mode, I get to draw a card and you don't, kind of thing. I get to time walk for 3 mana. But now with the instant, you get to open up to, like, blowing out combat tricks and screwing up things at the end of their turn. So if you just say go with a counterspell on this, and they play a guy at the top, you're like, no, I'm going to just put that back on top, and then maybe counter it next turn.
And every enchantment they play is not a bestow enchantment, like it's just not going to be. So this allows you to not only, particularly if you guys are in top deck mode, and they top deck, Fate Foretold, sweet, and you go, nope. Griptide it back. They got 0 cards out of it. They -1 card. You get to draw a card. They get to draw the same card. Like, it puts you ahead in a lot of really powerful ways. Super good and limited. No unconstructed, but you will enjoy it in the 40-card formats. Horizon Scholar. That's a sick uncommon, by the way. 6 mana, 4/4 flyer, gets to scry 2 when it enters the battlefield. Like, that's a sweet uncommon flyer.
It's definitely format dependent. I'm not going to say if I'm happy with it or not. It depends.
When are you unhappy with a 4/4 flyer in limited?
I mean, I can be.
Air Elemental, where, like, you pay 1 more for the Air Elemental.
You do not compare this to Air Elemental.
Dude, it's
Air
more
Elemental.
mana.
I'm thinking Air Servant.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I'm wrong.
Yeah. Air Elemental plus 1 mana. You get to scry 2. Like, you don't want elementals, just like you don't want Sarah Angels in every set. You don't want air elementals in every set. But as a 4/4 flyer in limited, like, this guy is sweet.
And when you get to, like, turn 6 in limited, like, scry is going to be very important at, like, helping you not draw those lands that you don't want. So when you look at the top 2 and you see a lot of your 1-drops or a lot of your lands, you get rid of them, you get deeper and closer to getting your bigger spells again. So I do like that these, like, scry late in the game spells allow you to just, like, get that much closer to playing more big spells.
Absolutely, and scry to me is always funny because when you play Horizon Scholar and you're like 6 mana, 4/4 flyer, and then you look at the top 2 and you go, and you put them back, and your opponent is like, oh my god! They just played a 4/4 flyer, and they're totally okay with the top 2 cards on the top of their deck. I am screwed.
Yeah.
I am screwed. So, like, it's a good feeling in a lot of ways when you get to play the 4/4 flyer, and you look, and you're like, oh, removal spell on another guy. Sweet. Go ahead.
Yeah, but then that person is Evan. I'm playing against him. Like, that's fine. His top card is that draw card, enchantment, and then I Hero's Demise it after you enchant it, and I'm just like, yeah, told you, buddy.
That's not cool. Play this thing in limited. It's awesome.
Yeah, very good.
Super awesome. Lost in a Labyrinth. Woo! All right, it's a shrink.
Yeah, I mean,
Scries.
these things are fine. These are cards that I do not want to play a lot of, and I might play one, but I definitely love boarding these in certain situations. Like, I am, like, the biggest fan. I can't remember what it was. It was the Overload card that did -3, -0.
Sure.
Or -2, -0. I don't remember exactly.
Right, I don't remember
what it was.
exactly either. But
I don't remember what it was called.
there was an Overload where you could -2, -0.
It was -4, -0, actually.
-4, and then the Overload was 3, I think it was.
Yeah, but I love these kind of effects because they're very tricky. No one ever plays around them, and you can, like, do a lot of damage with them, but you don't want to, like, main deck them. These are, like, cards that after you see a game play out and you're like, well, if that's how his deck operates and that's how my deck operates, it's good. So I love having these at the top of my sideboard.
I mean, I love this cycle, and, you know, the white one was God's Willing, Heroes Lost in the Labyrinth, there's the red one, the Spark Jolt, and there's some other ones as well. But the idea that you can basically do this to your own creature and it's good for you, I like that a lot. I like that it's not just a combat trick. It's not just something you play on their creatures. It's something you can, if needed.
It's a silver lining when you're enchanting, when you're doing it to your own.
I mean, it's a silver lining. I mean, ultimately, if you're like dying for that effect, whatever the effect is, and there's some really good ones. The one that shocks when he's heroic or whatever, when he's targeted. So there's a lot of play in these cards. The Scry one is terrific, and ultimately not a card that you're going to run a lot of. That you're really going to be happy about running a lot of the time. But 22nd, 23rd card, it does help you it does help you scry through your deck a little bit. It is a good effect. No one's going to play around it. There's a lot of good upsides to this one.
Again, a very good card to play when your curve is, like, the same all around. A lot of 4s or a lot of 5s or something, so you can, like, curve it out.
Sure. Master of Waves, baby.
All right.
He's so freaking weird.
He's a very weird card, and I don't want any bad mail or bad blood here.
Here we go.
But this is like, when I saw this card, I just thought of it as a cult leader. Like, he comes into play, his devotion has how many followers he has, and then when he leaves, everyone drinks the juice and dies.
Oh, and now they're dead now.
Yeah.
And all I said in the Magic Show was that I don't think it's going to work in Standard. I don't think there's enough support for it. It's really good in Limited because the effect is ridiculous in order to make a bunch of guys. But in Constructed, I actually see it in Legacy Merfolk as a 1 or a 2 of because of Aether Vial. And because you're not really going to cast it for 4 mana in Legacy.
No, but you
rarely get to 4 mana.
You never want to vial at 4 either, though.
Well, not necessarily, but you also draw lots of vials. Like, drawing 2 vials is not unheard of. And I've practiced a lot of Merfolk, and I've played it in Legacy Opens before. And, you know, you can get 1 vial to 2 and 1 vial to 4, and then you just Master of Waves, make literally 5 guys, 5 2/1s, and, like, that's 10 damage right there. Like,
yeah.
It's really scary to have a Lord and another Lord and then play Master of Waves and get 5 dudes.
My biggest problem is I don't understand, like, if it's a mythic, it must be good. But it doesn't look good because if they kill the Master of Waves, all the guys die. And I understand it from a favorite perspective. He's bringing elemental waves at them and attacking, so if he's gone, there's no waves.
Yeah, there's flavor in there, I'm sure. Mainly, I think that either this is going to get a lot better as the block goes on, or it's going to get a lot better when the next block is revealed, next fall. This almost feels like a plant, you know?
Sure, yeah.
Because it's so weird, it's so unique. It has pro red for some random reason, and it makes 1/0s. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I thought it made 0/1s, right? I'm like, oh, he dies. You got 0/1s left over.
No, they all die. They all just go away.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so weird. I like the card because it's so different.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you do with all the tokens. Like, there's no Blood Artist, like, to go with it anymore, which would have been sweet. But then Blood Artist goes away with Devotion. So it's just like, it's so hard to evaluate, and I just have to wait. Like, this is definitely a card that I'm not going to touch until someone else touches, and I'll be like, oh, okay.
Oh, you figured out the puzzle.
Yeah.
We didn't.
Yeah, I'm not looking into it.
It's going to be sick and limited, though. Seriously. Like,
yeah, I mean, if it dies, you lose the effect, but if it doesn't die, you just win.
If it doesn't die, you got like 4 or 5 guys for free that just like smash in. I mean, it doesn't take much.
Maybe that's the thing about him is he's just like, the reason that he's so good is because like we haven't seen the power of playing like 20 power for blue on turn 4 or like, you know, like 10 power.
Somebody's going to do something with it. Melitus Charlatan. He's a charlatan. He's a scrapper.
Yeah, my favorite thing about this card is how good it is in 2-headed giant. Like because it would be sweet because it's there. Like you don't get the copy, they get the copy. Or like Commander is just like that one diplomatic guy that his legend is the 1/3 that everyone draws cards, the Moon Crescent card or whatever.
Oh yeah, Kami of the Crescent Moon.
Yeah, Kami of the Crescent Moon. He's just the guy that wants everyone to have fun. He's like, man, that Cruel Ultimatum looks fun. Here, you should have another one. And then they're like, sure, I'll target you. And it's like, But that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to make everyone happy.
But duders, I'm just trying to do the thing. What I had mentioned to some guys internally when we had talked about it was the stats I thought were pushed. Normally, when you have a card that does something like this, it's fork on a stick or it's orange chan on a stick or whatever it is, they're normally like 1/1s, 3 mana 1/1s, or 3 mana 0/1s, or something silly, because they want to make sure that the guy dies really quickly so he doesn't sort of take over the game by himself. And ultimately, the fork effect is not that powerful, mainly because it's 3 mana, and you have to have this creature live for a whole turn, and then you have to be able to play the spell and be able to use him and be able to copy it and blah, 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 blah. But I was surprised in that I felt it was a little pushed more than your average 3 mana blue guy who does something cool, time elemental-esque is sort of also the card I was thinking about. But, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fun, interesting card. Like, it can see constructed play just because, like, copying a shock could be cool. But for the most part, I'm not that big of a fan of it.
I don't think this is constructed in any form or fashion. I think it could be really awesome in Commander. I think it's going to be marginally neat in Limited, mainly because its body is fine. It doesn't matter if you use its ability. If you're just working on the curve, it's great. And when you do have a spell, no matter what it is, yes, and heroic with it, like, it is legitimately dangerous. Like, you don't want to have 2 copies of the +2/+2 to 2 different creatures. Like, that's freaking ridiculous. So, in that way, it can be really powerful and limited. It is, I think, the correct stats to keep it out of constructed in the right way. And I like it in casual a lot. Cool card. Mnemonic Wall coming back from Rise of the Eldrazi. Card is sweet.
This card is one of my favorites, mostly because it has a good stats for what you get out of it. Like, you want the wall, you get, like, the card back in your hand. The only thing that's lacking is a really good draw spell in this set. Like, that's what I want to do, is I want to draw a bunch of cards and I want to mnemonic wall and draw a bunch of cards.
Wait a minute. They put a pretty good draw spell in this one.
It's rare, though.
And we're going to talk about it, and it's going to be sweet. But Mnemonic Wall basically just regrowths and limited your best removal spell, as it should, able to block anything attacking you, as it should, and it's just a great card. It's a really sweet one. I've ran multiples, and I've not felt bad about it. I love Mnemonic Wall. It's really sweet. Yeah,
it's a very good card. Do not think, like, I mean, if you were playing any M14, you saw how Archaeomancer was unbelievably good, and that's what Mnemonic Wall does as well.
Yep, but arguably better. Yep, arguably. I like it. Nimbus Naiad? Yeah. Another nymph.
Oh yeah, they did make the Griffin guide.
Well, they made the Griffin guide that was for blue not for white, which is fine, and it's a way to differentiate them as well. We talked about that a little bit, but ultimately they're limited all-stars. Honestly, you play every single copy you have in blue decks. If you have to splash for it, that still seems good because it's a really powerful card.
And yeah, you aggressively take this one because evasion is a very good thing. 2/2 fly or Winddrake-esque. Like, Windrake sees play. It's not bad. We've played Windrake. I mean, I remember playing a lot of Windrakes in Ravnica block, and this guy has a huge upside, and I think this is going to be one of the, like, defining commons of blue. I don't know if it's the best, but it's very close to the best common in blue.
That's very good.
Yeah, I can't say anything bad about it.
Play in limited every single time, nowhere near constructed. Omen Speaker is not Augur of Bolas.
Okay, you just talk because I don't want to yell at this card.
It's just not. It wants to be. Kind of feels
Wait,
like
it's Scry 2?
But Scry 2?
I thought it was Scry 3, and I still thought it was bad.
Yeah. I actually think that control decks are still going to play it.
No.
Because it's a 1/3.
No.
Those numbers are important.
No.
Yep, well, they are. Oh, okay. They're important.
Drawing a card off of Augur was an amazing thing, especially got you closer to your Sphinx's revs. This card doesn't really do enough. It doesn't give you that extra card advantage. I would much rather play like spotty removal over a card like Omen Speaker because sure, it's a 1/3, but it gets trumped by creatures really quickly. Like, the list of cards that it blocks, like, this is okay against mono red. I think this is a very good card against the mono red decks.
Against mono red, it's good against Scavenge News before it starts eating things, Voice of Resurgence before it starts making tokens. I mean, it's a roadblock. I mean, that's what Augur of Bolas was, except it could draw you a card.
This is a
This just lets you see things.
This is a very big speed bump. This is not a roadblock. Half the like Voice, Fleecemane Lion gets over the top of it. A lot of other creatures do. Like, it doesn't draw you a card. Like, this is just a bad Magic card. I dare I say pie bet. Dare I say pie bet?
I'm not doing it.
I will give you, this will not see top 16 of any SCG open, ever. risky one.
Wow.
I'll give you ever top 16 and SCG Open. That I almost don't make me throw in classics.
Fine. All right. Look, I don't want to bet on it because I'm not sure.
You know we both already lost a pie bet, right?
I know. We're already losing pie bets all over the place. Either way, Open Speaker is really good and limited because it is a speed bump.
Yep.
It will block all the little dorks. It will block their 1 drops, 2 drops, sometimes 3 drops. It will help you scry through your deck. That's fine. Constructed, it's just a higher bar. I still think it has potential. Even if they're wrong. Even if they choose poorly. We're moving on. I ain't doing it. I'm not doing it. I've learned too much pie in the ear, I swear to God. Ordeal of Passa. Now, this one's a sick one. This one's a really nice one.
I think this could see constructed play if Simic decks are possible.
Wow.
Like, it's cool. Like, it's cool. Like, it's just 2 mana, draw 2. In a lot of those decks, like, you evolve, you play it, you get a counter, you draw immediately that turn. So it's just 2 mana, draw 2.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a bad stats. 2 mana, draw 2 is a pretty good stats.
I mean, Boon Satyr is a card, and that card is real. And I actually think evolved decks are going to be a thing. And to be able to play this on Experiment 1, on turn 2, or whatever, you know, like, it can legitimately be scary. And then draw you cards as a result. But in Limited, it's like, whoa. It's really good in Limited.
Yeah, I do like it because the upside of drawing 2 cards is better than all the other effects, in my opinion.
It's true.
And being able to get some counters on guys isn't that difficult.
The red one's close behind, though.
The red one is close behind.
Deals 3. It's really sweet. We'll get to that one later. But in Limited, high pick, great on every creature you put it on, essentially. Potentially even constructed play. Card sick.
Yeah, I'm very happy with this one.
Very good. Prescient Chimera. This is a 3/4 flyer for 5 in Limited. That's really, really good.
For common, that's good stats.
For common, that's fantastic stats.
And you're not going to cast a lot of instant sorcery, but like the added bonus to just take on scry to everything. And the other cool thing is your ability to like, let's say Magma Jet, and then you get to scry 1, and then you get to scry 2 once Magma Jet resolves. Like, you get to look at top 3. It does kind of suck if the top card is something that you kind of want. You're like, no.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's sort of like the drawback of scry sometimes, particularly if you get to sort of like,
multi-scry.
Yeah, you know, like, chug it on your peanut butter when this guy gives you scry and your spell gave you scry, and now you're like, oh, that card's great. And then your spell gave you scry, and you're like, still great. You know, it's like, it's kind of not used in the right way. Honest to God, doesn't really matter what the rest of that text said. If it was 5 mana, 3/4 flyer, I would have played the crap out of it in Limited all day. It's just good stats. 5 mana, 3/3 flyer is like the bar. This is a 3/4. It's terrific.
Meat Potato Magic, you're going to want to play every copy in Sealed, and you're going to probably want to play every copy in Draft.
Yep, just because it's fantastic. 3/4 is excellent stats. Prognostic Sphinx. I like this guy so hard. Oh.
Okay, so 2 things about this card. Love it. I love this card, but I don't know what I want to do with it, and it looks like it just straight out came from Adventure Time.
Dude.
Just like straight out. I feel like they just walked into a room and that guy just started talking, right? Like,
so
it is
awesome.
an Adventure Time.
So good. The art is fantastic. I love the background. I love the way that guy looks and his crazy tail back there and his weird beard. It's totally sweet. The card itself is just sick. I just love it. I love the fact that you discard a card and you're not able to deal with this guy. Period. If they have a card in their hand, you're going to deal with it. You're going to take it. When he attacks, he doesn't even have to hit the player to get the scry. Like, that's a lot of scrying. That's really deep in your deck. You're able to just top 3, put that one down, we'll keep the best one. Okay, great. Like, man, this card, in Limited, whoa.
Yeah, in Limited, this card's a bonkers.
I don't know about Constructed. I feel he's basically outclassed in a lot of ways, but scrying 3, giving it hexproof, it's basically going to live always. I mean, the problem is Aetherling exists. Yeah. Which is kind of a thing. And Aetherling won't exist one day. And then I think we start talking about
Aetherling will exist every day. He just jumps out of realms and jumps into new sets.
He's back in. Doesn't matter. You can whip him in. He don't care. He's still coming back. Prognostic, though, super limited bomb, monster, huge, 3/5, everything, blocks everything, hard to kill in the air.
The only reason I would not want to open this in Limited is because the Scry 3 ability every turn makes me think that I'm going to see the cards again, and I have to, like, map it all out. And it's just going to give me a really big headache because I'm not smart enough.
Yeah, I'm going to get a really big headache because I'm winning so hard. Card's awesome. Sea God's Revenge. This, speaking of limited, like, game changers,
I'm going to go with the best uncommon for blue by far. Like, I think that this is just bonkers. Like, The format's a little slow. Returning 3 creatures to their owner's hands is unbelievable.
That is ridiculous. Like, when you return 2 monstrosity guys and then something else, doesn't really matter. I mean, okay, like, here we go. Just get you. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to scry one. Oh, okay.
I mean, if you even look back at, like, Cyclonic Rift, like, Cyclonic Rift was insane against Selesnya.
Sure.
But, like, you usually just bounced 3 guys in limited, and it was bonkers. It was, like, it was a game-changing and game-breaking spell to just return their whole hand, and that usually was only, like, 3 to 5 permanents. So this already bounces 3 permanents.
Yep, and essentially is 100% worth the cost. You play it limited every time. You're going to love it. It's going to turn the game around. Like, this is a card that you're like, oh my God, boom, 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 now I can kill you. That's what these cards do.
Or it's in your opening, like, 7 or 10 cards, and you map your entire game plan around it. Like, your entire strategy is based around you casting this on turn 6 or 7.
And you trying to almost bait them into using their monstrosity cards. You know, like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. I'll make this bad attack, and they'll make it monstrous and kill the whatever. And you're like, all right, sweet. And then boom, 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 and brah.
Yep.
So good. Card is terrific. Nowhere near constructed. Sea Log Monster, also absolutely terrific and is really good and limited. It's funny to me, and it's one of those things that you can see is that they will often do a cost, and then they will do +2 mana for the monstrosity, and they vary from that a little bit, and we'll look at those. But ultimately, the monstrosity looks really expensive, but it's really just a turn or two after you play this guy. Like, okay, I mean, he's still going to be he's going to be a huge wall, and then 2 turns from now, he's going to be a really scary monster.
Yeah, I mean,
an 8/8.
In blue, this is very good because blue doesn't get 5/5 walls for 5.
Right.
But he doesn't technically have walls. If you play against other island decks, he gets to attack immediately.
Yeah, it's true.
But the thing I don't like about this one the most is when you're not playing against another blue deck, he's like the only monstrosity creature that you can't just like use as like a pump spell, like a root wall effect, where you can attack, and if they block, then you monsters, but if not, you don't.
That's fair. I mean, and honestly, if they were attacking into you, you can still monstrosity if you want to. If you want to cover all the angles, because we're Magic players and you have to cover every angle ever. The idea that you have a 5-mana 5/5 in blue that can get really scary in a couple turns, I think is terrific.
Yeah, no, I mean the monsters in blue don't really exist, so I like this card a lot.
I like the flavor. I think a Sea Log Monster, it gets bigger and it gets scary. It all makes sense. Ultimately in limited, it's not as good as a Prognostic Sphinx or even the 3/4 flyer. But is it as good as a 3/4 flyer?
No,
I didn't think so.
I don't think so.
I'm just checking.
I don't like it
because part of me goes like, well, it is a 5/5 turns into an 8/8 that
I'd much rather take evasion and limited.
Yeah, it's easy. It's too easy to chump block essentially, even if you monstrosity it, but. Still,
I mean,
very good limited.
I mean, monstrosity doesn't cost a lot, but if you think about it, that you pay 12 mana just to attack him with an 8/8, like it's fine. It's a lot of an investment.
It's hard to think of it that way. Now, Shipbreaker Kraken is a bomb.
Yes.
I mean, and sealed. It's ridiculous.
I mean, now this is a bomb. Like it's a 6/6 for 6 for starters in blue.
That can attack, no drawbacks.
Yes, that can attack. It's a crazy kraken. It's like a weird fish, kraken, crab. I don't know. It doesn't look like kraken, but
a kraken, fish, a crack.
Yeah, but its ability is so disgusting. It's so gross.
Like, I want to take everything you've done for the last 4 turns and negate it. All of it. Just like nope.
Yeah,
GG's.
I mean, it just automatically wins the game if you hit 8 mana. They can't deal with it. It's like very Colossal Whale-esque, except it's cheaper. It's a mana cheaper, and it's a power bigger. And investing 8 mana in this is not like that big of a deal.
It's fine. I mean, again, it's 2 mana more than what you paid to cost it. But as I was discussing in the last video, where we were talking about, there's a big difference between 7 and 8, in my opinion. In my experience, it's like I've been able to get to 7 where I'm just not able to get to 8, and it's just weird. There's a really weird line between 7 and 8 in limited, in my opinion. It's easier to get there in sealed because it's a little bit slower. In draft, it's almost really difficult at times, and you have to work with a lot of the early defenders to ensure that you get there. But so it sometimes might be a stretch to get to that 8th mana. But once you do, your opponent is like, oh my God.
Yeah, I would just have to say that the amount of Horncaller's chance I have on Moto would like to argue with you.
Fine.
Because there's like, I don't know, like 80 of them on my account, and only like 60 of the Courser's Accord. So like, we made some rhinos in my day.
I see how it is. Card's a super huge bomb and limited. Wow. First pick. high five your neighbor when you get it in sealed, so on and so forth. Stymied Hopes.
We got a Force Spike back.
Force Spike Slapper.
We got a Force Spike in a format where we still have Syncopate, which is just way better.
Well, it is way better in that regard. The best part about Force Spike was always the best part about Force Spike was that no one played around it.
Yeah.
It was 1 mana. That was the best part. But one of the really good parts was no one plays around it. Let's put it that way. No one. You're just going to be like,
no. And now everyone plays around counter magic, and like Syncopate exists. So this might cease play later.
And limited.
Oh, and limited?
Let's be clear. I don't think this is good and constructed.
No.
But it's really good and limited because no one plays around it. You can play it early, and most of the time, particularly in sealed, it's going to be even better in sealed because you'll find yourself in a position where people are like, ripping and waiting and ripping and waiting and ripping and waiting, and then finally they're like, a land, huge bomb, and then you go, nope, and scry one. Like,
there's the opposite effect of if your opponent is getting flooded and then finally rips a spell. So, like, I do agree with you that it can be cool, but it is a card that I will always stay away from because I always lean on the side of what happens when we both sell out. Like, what happens on turn 14? I always want my decks to be built in a way that, in sealed at least, that I can get to turn 14. And in draft, I always want my decks to be like, how am I going to blow him out around turn 7 or 8? And so, like, this is fine in draft, I guess, but I would never touch it in sealed.
What I like about it is that if it's irrelevant, it still lets you do something. What sucked about Force Spike really bad was that after turn X, Y, and Z, when everybody has a bunch of mana, it doesn't do anything.
Except
like, literally does 0.
You can only discard it to Psych Tug. That's it.
Right, but at least this lets you scry 1.
Yep.
Like, okay, it doesn't matter, but at least I get to see what my next card is. So I'm not just stuck with a Force Spike that just sucks. It does something, which is what I like about it. Ultimately, not a high pick in limited. Probably won't see any constructed play at all ever. That's it.
Unless you brave souls out there.
Oh, you're the bravest. Swan Song. So cool. So sweet.
Just when I thought I wanted to start playing Modern, they just give the most annoying card to Splinter Twin ever.
Well, I mean, it's also played against Splinter Twin, right?
No.
It's to stop for Splinter Twins.
I mean,
it doesn't stop the creatures, of course, but also I like this card a lot for Legacy. I actually do feel this might have some Legacy play. Now, obviously, the Rug Delver players aren't going to play it to give them the best blocker for Delver ever. But, it does solve, Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top and, whatever other enchantment, instant sorcery thing they're doing.
I mean,
obviously,
it counters
Show and Tell.
It counters Show and Tell.
It counters Force of Will. I mean, it counters a bunch of stuff. And just for 1 blue mana, which is, what tournament players care most about are costs. There's, the difference between cancel and counterspell is 1 mana.
Yep.
But one of them is way too good to exist in standard and has for almost over a decade now, I guess now. Jesus. But when you see a counterspell for 1 blue mana, it just says counter target spell on it. Sure, they get a guy, but it countered that spell.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a card that you're going to want to play in decks where you're comboing off. So, like this is good against Show and Tell, but I think Show and Tell is also going to want to play it.
It can't counter itself, which is a biggie. Swan Song can't counter itself. Oh, wait a minute.
Why can't it counter itself?
I keep thinking it's an enchantment counter. I apologize. Yes, it can counter itself, and that makes me sad. Why? Because of that very scenario you explained. Because I don't want Show and Tell to play this too. I want to play this against Show and Tell so they can't Show and Tell me.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean...
Which is kind of sad. But yes, it can counter itself. I apologize. It is a very, very powerful card. I snap bought a foil, even if it's not going to be good in cube. I don't know yet. I haven't tried it, but if it is not, I'm still going to hold on that foil till it's like $50 or something.
It's going to be a very powerful card, and it's. I don't like when new sets bring out cards that aren't going to be good in constructed or in standard. Sorry, there's not going to be a standard card, but it's going to be just so good in combo decks, so good. And like, I hate combo decks. I really do. I hate them. I hate them so much. I just want them all to die.
Well, I mean, look, combo decks can be defined as a bunch of different things. There's combination decks, which is kind of like, that's where combo comes from. But the idea that if you take like this thing plus this thing equals I win the game, or this thing plus this thing plus this thing means I win the game, you could call a combo deck, Poison Guy and Rancor. Like, technically that's a combo, you know what I mean? Like, I think the combos that you mentioned more are like the I win the game combos.
Yes.
You dislike I win the game combos.
I dislike Splinter Twin and Pestermite. I dislike Emrakul and Show and Tell, and all these very powerful decks that just win the game on the spot are going to play this card, and it's super good. And instead of like playing a bunch of Rebs, or Rebs plus Spell Pierce plus all these different situational things, you just have Swan Song now. And in those combo matchups in Legacy, like against Ad Nauseam and things like that, they don't have to have situational counterspells anymore. They're just like, this counters everything that I care about, and it's over.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Do you play it in limited?
No.
I don't think
you don't want to give them a 2/2 bird. There's not enough sorceries and instants. Like, you don't even know if you're going to see them. Like, there are enchantments in the format, but I don't, like, giving them a 2/2 is like, I mean, if I, like...
Your question is this. Would I rather have them bestow Heliod's Emissary or anyone's Emissary, as we'll get to, or would you rather them have a 2/2 flyer?
Well, I mean, in that situation, I would much rather have a 2/2 flyer, or them have a 2/2 flyer, but I would much rather annul it for common.
Of course, but it does solve basically everything. I mean, they can't blow you out with the 2 creatures you get +2/+2. They can't blow you out with some random combat trick. They can't resolve their god. I would rather them have a 2/2 flyer than Heliod or Erebos or Perforos or any of that crap. I mean, you know, it's hard to argue to say that it's worse for you to not play this card.
You could also always, like, target your own card with something and then eat it with Swan Song and make a 2/2 flyer. All right, I'm sold. You can play limited.
That's right. It's not like an all-star. It's just good, though, is what I'm saying. It's actually sort of an upgraded annul in that you get to choose, you know, like, do I want to deal with that thing or do I want them to have a 2/2 flyer instead? And those types of choices are very powerful to have. In Constructed, I think it's going to see more play in older formats than it is the newer formats like Standard, but that doesn't mean it's bad in any way and could be, and if you open a foil, save it because it's like $1 million.
Not $1 million.
All right, a lot of money. Thassa, God of the Sea.
The first god that we saw.
The first god you saw, everyone was freaking out over it. I think the Think Tank was from Odyssey or Odyssey block, might have been Torment, and it was blue and 2 colorless. Look at the top card at the beginning of your upkeep. You can put it on your, you can put it in your graveyard.
Yeah.
You scry 1 instead of being able to put it in your graveyard. Now that doesn't randomly turn into a 5/5, and that doesn't have the ability to make things unblockable. However, making this turn into a 5/5 is a little bit difficult because you don't run a lot of permanents with blue with them, traditionally, at least in Constructed.
In Standard.
In Standard, for sure. And the ability to make creatures unblockable is actually not as powerful, I think, as a lot of people thought. And I thought, and I pointed this out in the show, I thought it was best described under Venser the Sojourner, where he had the ability of all creatures are unblockable this turn or whatever, and that was terrible, and it didn't really matter at all.
That's really bad.
It was bad. And that's fine. It's just that this is a card I actually think is very tricky and actually has sort of fooled a lot of people.
And
the gods. It's good? No, I don't think it's good. And I think a lot of the gods have what I would describe as the Planeswalker effect, is that they're so cool and they're so unique and they're so different. People are kind of going crazy over them because of those factors and not because they're just great on their own.
Yeah.
And I actually feel like this is better than almost any other than Nylea, who is just kind of the worst, I think, by default.
You take that back. You take that back.
I mean, I like Nylea more than her, I guess.
The only thing
I think Thassa is the worst god. I'm just going to say it. You know what? I'm just going to say it.
I agree because I think there's only one home for it, if that's even a home, and that would be Modern Merfolk. Maybe. Maybe. I mean, it doesn't seem that bad, but it also isn't that great. Like,
could you play it in Legacy? It's just like a 3-mana do not much.
Do nothing. Yeah. No, I mean, Modern has all the same Merfolk, just no Force of Wills, but this card can come down. You can still vial it in because it is technically a creature, even if you don't have it in, and you can give your creatures unblockable, and that's something they've always liked. So I could definitely see this being a Modern card. That's all I'm gonna say. The thing about the gods is I don't want to say don't pick them up because I feel like they're gonna definitely fluctuate where you should pick them up. I think they're gonna be good, they're gonna be bad, but I think they're gonna rest, and I don't know where that is. And
yeah, they're very similar to me, like the Eldrazi.
Yeah.
Eldrazi are now worth $1 million. Why? Because they're never going to be able to reprint them unless they reprint them in some weird set like from the vault. They're not going to be able to they're not going to be able to put them, sort of jam them in any other set. They're not going to be able to jam these gods anywhere else. You know what I mean? Like, this is the place where they go. We have to literally go back to Theros in order for us to see this card ever happen again. If you like it, you should get it now or get it just soon after its after its value drops a little bit, because it's just going to go up and then continue to go up. I mean, my God, at this point, Emrakul is $20 or $30.
I mean, that's just Magic.
Foil is $1 million. It's like...
That's Magic, man. If you don't get them, they just always go up and up and up and up and up. They never go down.
More or less, and particularly the more unique and the more strange, you know, like the Eldrazi creatures, like these creatures, you know, those are the kinds you want to pick up. But again, I think ultimately there's been a lot of hype around this guy, and I love hype. Don't get me wrong. I just feel like at the end of the day, it's not that powerful.
I mean, if he had a Trident, he might be better.
Right, but would I buy it? Nope. Nope. Missing the point. It missed the point.
Yep.
All right, so I'm sorry that Thas is not that great. Now, to go back just a second, I'm going to go back just a second. Really good and limited. Good and limited.
Yes, awesome and limited.
Don't not
all the
play
gods
it,
are insane and limited. We don't have to say that anymore. They're just insane.
All right, they're insane and limited.
Yeah.
Play them all and enjoy them all. Thassa's Bounty, it's good in ways that I don't want to ever play multiples, but I might play one.
Yeah.
It's 6 mana, draw 3 cards. That second ability might as well be blank, or that second line rather.
The only second line about it is like in late game in limited, it could potentially be a thing. Especially like if they played a scry and kept something at the top, you just get to go ha ha, and you get it.
You get to foil their scry, which is actually legitimately really cool.
Yeah, but it's not like you're gonna play to that. It's just like you get lucky sometimes. Like it's never gonna be like I knew that's why I didn't play it last turn. It's like no, you would have jammed it last turn if you had it.
Yeah, but again, in limited on turn 6, after you've played out a bunch of guys and the board is kind of stalled, for you to tap 6 mana and draw 3 cards is relevant.
Yeah,
and can impact the game.
I do think like we just saw if this format's slow, we saw an M14. Opportunity was insane. Also. We keep saying that the format's going to be a little bit slower than what we've been used to from like Return to Ravnica block.
Right.
And you're trying to get to 8-9 mana, so a draw spell for 6 that draws you 3 that helps you get those land drops doesn't seem that bad.
Right. It seems fine, but again, it's just one of those where it is common. It isn't something I want to run a bunch of. I don't want 2 of these in my opening hand. But I do think it's worth running. You would.
Sure.
Of course you would. Now, Thassa's Emissary, I'm okay with a bunch of these in my opening hand.
This card is so good. I mean, this whole cycle of Hill Giants that are not in red, like, that are just these 3/3s for blue and white creatures are so powerful, and then putting this on something and getting to draw a card, like, it is not difficult when you bestow on turn 6 to have the biggest creature on the table in a blue deck. That seems ridiculous to say, but that's so true.
Wow.
And then you get to tag and draw a card, and you get a replacement, and then a 2-for-1s, and it's just, I don't know. It's so good.
It's very, very good. It's very highly pickable in limited, in draft. You play every copy you get in sealed. It's not going anywhere near constructed, but that's okay because it's unlimited. Just bomb. It's sweet. Yep. Well, I don't know about bomb, but it's really good.
I mean, it's another one of those cards that I think I'm going to be happy first picking.
Absolutely. You're not going to be unhappy. Triton Fortune Hunter.
Yeah, what do I do with this? Because I really think it could be busted. Like, this is the kind of card that we could just be like, in a month, there's just a deck in Standard around this.
Wow. Really?
You don't think so?
No. But I do think it's actually going to be really good and limited because this is the #1 guy you want to put everything on.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what enchantment it is, it's going on the Fortune Hunter because I need to draw some cards. The draw card enchantment. Woo!
Yeah, I mean, if there's a ban Hexproof deck in Standard, though, like, we can assert some authority and then just go nuts.
Maybe. It's possible. The problem with the ban Hexproof stuff was always that the creatures that didn't have Hexproof died really quickly because your opponent just had all that removal they couldn't use. Nah. Okay, whatever. I play tested ban Hexproof for a time, and that's what happened to me, but it's fine. Your mileage may vary, as they say. In Limited, it's sweet. You play it, all of them, as a Grey Ogre that has amazing upside. It doesn't take many ordeals and or just pumps to make this guy terrific.
Yep.
It's really easy and simple that way. In Constructed...
okay, fine.
Fine, dude. You're trying too hard. Triton Short Thief. I looked this up. You know how many 1 mana, 1 blue mana, 1/2s there are in Magic?
0?
Nope.
There's one more?
Yep. His name was Trusted Advisor. He was in Savers of Kamigawa, one of the worst sets of all time. And it was a 1 blue 1/2, but of course back then you had a drawback because that's way too good for a blue card. Well, the upside was it lets your maximum hand size increase by 2, but the downside was you had to return a blue creature during your upkeep. It was bad. So, Triton Short Thief, that's literally all I have for this card. Don't play it, it's terrible. All right, Triton Tactics.
You play...
Here's the blue one. There's the blue target 2 creature spell.
And it's like Tangle. It's not as good as Tangle, but it's pretty close. Now, Triton's Tactic is everything I want out of a combat trick. It just does everything. I get to untap, I get to block.
Really powerful.
They don't get to untap next turn. I get to attack twice now.
I mean, 2 different toughness pumps, and everything that they're blocking is tapped if it has vigilance, for example, and is guaranteed not to untap. Like, that is extremely powerful.
This is just proof of why you use Tridents.
Oh,
because
see?
Bident cards suck. Trident cards are awesome.
Yeah, but seriously, this card is amazing. And we're actually going to see if the other 1-mana spells that target creature, or the other spells that target 2 different creatures, this is easily among the top. This is really good.
I mean, I would go for sure. White's by far the best.
The +2/+2.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's the most expensive.
No, it's the cheapest. The black one, or not the cheapest, but it's pretty cheap. The black one costs 4.
Yeah, but it gives them lifelink, which is kind of big too. It can turn a game around in ways that +2/+2 can't.
Yeah.
This can also turn a game around in that it can stop their best attackers from coming to get you for a whole turn. It targets 2 guys for just 1 mana versus 2 guys for 3 mana, which was the white guy, which was the white one, and the black one costs 4, of course. I think this one and the red one are just really, really powerful.
I agree, and this one is going to be a very good tricky combat play that a lot of players are not going to see coming. It's going to blow them out, and it's going to of all of them, I think this one wins the most games though.
Absolutely. This is one of those cards that I read and I go like, I cannot wait to play this limited format.
Yep.
Like I can't wait to both play around this card, play with this card, see the situations this card creates, see the sort of the corners this card puts me in that I got to get out of. I'm like, oh my god, like, now my 2 best creatures are tied down. What am I supposed to do?
And then the situations where you're like, do I play around this? How do I play around this? Can I play around this? I can't play around this.
Exactly. Well, if he's got it, he's got it. Whatever. Let's go. Those are terrific moments in limited Magic, and that's what this card gives you, and I love it. It's super high pick. Not quite first, like you want the bestow guys, you want flyers over this, but it's really soon after.
Yep.
Really, really soon after. Vaporkin, okay.
We've seen Welcome Turn many times, and Welcome Turn has always been good, and this card is very playable. Probably, I think it's close. It's going to take some testing to know if it's better than the bestow, the flyer. Right. But this is what I would guess a 3rd through 5th pick.
Yeah, it's pretty highly. I would take the bestow Windrake girl, the nymph, way higher than this, personally.
I don't know yet, because it's a 2-drop that flies and it attacks.
You don't know. I mean, I know back in, let's see, Welcome Turn was in...
Zendikar,
thank you. And I played a lot of the Welcome Turn decks, but again, Zendikar was a very fast format.
Yeah.
Where you really wanted 2/1s, and you got all the 2/1s you could for 2 mana, and yeah. So.
And we haven't seen a Griffin Sentinel, so we don't have to worry about that right now. Like, those are the cards that cards like this don't want to see play, but there's not a lot of them. A lot of the flyers in this format, this card trades with. Yeah. In the early turns, at least.
Right. And/or can trade up depending on what they're playing. So, yeah, this is actually a very, very powerful card in Limited. Where you take it highly depending on how the format is, and it's hard for us to say what that is right now.
But I know that you take it before, like, guesstimate of turns, like pick 6 or something. It'll go before then.
Right, and it's playable. Like, it's not playable.
It's very good.
Voyage's End, that's a hell of an unsummon.
It's a hell of a picture, too. I love it. It's, like, really good art. Like, this art is what I'm going to beg Evan to try to get on our lithographs. Like, that's what's going to happen. I'm just going to be like, please, talk to the guy.
Please, huge giant on the weird raft going over the waterfall would be totally sweet.
It would be.
It looks great. I mean, I think it looks super sweet. But ultimately, as a combat trick / as just a trick in general, as an unsummon's great. Unsummon's always been great.
Disperses, see play in Limited. This card's going to see a lot of play in Limited. I think it's very good. Yep. I love that the great thing about Scry is it really helps tempo strategies. Like when you're just trying to continue with that. Like the worst feeling is when you have a tempo card and you just keep drawing lands out the top. So like being able to do this and get the lands out the top just works wonders.
It's true. This in conjunction with a card like the Vaporkin, aka the Welcome Turn, You know, that's very, very powerful. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter. You know, if you're playing with fatties and you bounce their best fatty so you can get in with your guys, like, still terrific.
Yep.
Unsummon is great. This is Unsummon plus 1 mana with Scry 1. Play it in Limited. You're going to love it. Wave Crash Triton rather, is really powerful.
It can be pretty sweet, especially with a lot of cantrips. I think it's fine. I mean, it's a good removal spell, or a tricky way at least to deal with a big monster.
Right, and I mean that's to me sort of like what can blue do against the huge green fatties or the big or the red guys that have all these cool abilities or the first strike or whatever. It's like Triton's like, sure, no problem. Target me with your thing or target me with your draw spell enchantment, and we're going to tap that down and keep it down and then get you. It's a card that has to work in context. It has to work with the other cards in your deck. If you play the Vaporkin type deck where you're trying to tempo them out with good early white creatures, good flying blue creatures, or a mixture of therein, the Triton sort of gives you the best bonus.
Yeah, and
between them.
And when drafting, there's a conflict between, do I take the enablers first or the cards, like, for example, do I want to take the enchantments first or do I want to take the cards that I want to enchant? And sometimes you want to take the cards that you want to enchant and then get the enchantments later. This is definitely a card that you want after you already have that theme going.
Right. It's not a card that people take unless, you know, they already have a lot of enablers or they're very much in blue and they want to make sure they have their 3-drop and so on and so forth. But as a 3-mana 1/4 with a really powerful heroic ability, this is an excellent blue card.
Yep.
In Limited. People ask, man. They want to know.
See,
Ashiok! Woo woo!
I like this card.
Why
is it when I see like an awesome Planeswalker that I like, everyone's like, nah, it's bad. I think this card is insane.
No, this card was insane until they kept giving everyone Savannah Lions. Once they gave a black one and the red one and the white one, I was like, oh. Because when this card was spoiled, I was super excited about it because they hadn't shown you those cards. They hadn't shown you all the early aggression that was going to be in the format beyond, you know, Ash Zealots or whatever.
We knew it was going to be there.
You knew it. I know, but I was still excited. I still wanted it to work.
But even with that, like, with cheap creatures comes cheaper activations of this to get their creatures.
Look, trust me. If anyone has tried to make this card horrific, it's me. I want to make this card work. I like Ashiok. I like what it does. I like the idea of it.
Yeah.
It's a super clever design. At the end of the day, it's just an Nephalia Drown Yard. It's really only for the control deck mirrors for them to beat each other with.
Until you take their Aetherling.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And then you give it back to them.
Right.
That's just a joke.
Well, there's that. Well, because it exiles and returns to its owner's control. Oh, that's terrible. Regardless, you know, the idea is that you just mill them out while you can sit behind, you know, Heliod's making guys and in your Esper deck, and Ashiok is just milling them away.
You are just living in so many crazy worlds.
Dude, I live in the best worlds.
I'm going to play my blue-black Planeswalker with my devotion-based white god.
The white god doesn't need devotion. Like, again, Heliod doesn't need to turn into a 5/6 to be a good card.
That's true.
That's what I'm sort of getting across. And it's only 1 white in its mana cost, even though it is 2 white to make a guy. But Ashiok is a guy that kind of stands out and gains value. You are going to randomly going to be able to get their Metamai or get their, I don't know, what else are they going to play
Voice
in a control
Resurgence.
deck? Voice Resurgence, dude. But in a control deck, because again, I don't think you don't bring this in versus aggro decks. Against the Xenagos decks, this card is terrible. Tell me why.
Oh, I'll explain myself in months. I don't know how many it'll be.
Yeah, I disagree.
But once I become right, I will tell you.
I'll make it work, I promise. All right. Battle-wise, Hoplite.
I really like this card because, again, it's like Scry, you get rid of a lot of lands, you just get to cycle through your deck a little with them. He is just a 2/2 for 2, which is fine, especially if you're going to get counters. Not as good as the mono white one.
Right.
Because you get an Anthem, but this is more of a, like, build a bear. Like, if you can give them protection, like, it's like, I'm going to enchant him, and they're like, kill him. I'm like, I'm going to God's willing him. Now I get a Scry 2, one at a time, though.
One at a time, yeah. So the idea, I think, is for the blue-white deck to be able to curve out in a lot of ways, and this is one of those guys that's going to be in the blue-white deck by default. And ultimately, just a good bear. A good bear with a good ability. It's not the best ability. It's not the worst heroic ability. It's just fine.
Yeah,
I'm not unhappy with it.
The weirdest thing, though, is what's going on with his fist. Like,
dude, his hand's all sick.
Yeah, it's like blue. I was like, why is that one not white? Why is the other hand not white and the one hand is blue?
Other hand's fine. Blue shield of pain.
And the other thing is, if you have this like blue stuff coming out of your hand, it must be magic. Why do you need a shield for it? Like, I feel like that is itself, like, if you just like let your enemy see the blue fist of fury, they're gonna run away.
But don't pick your nose with the blue fist of fury.
Doctor's advice.
Exactly. Psychic Intrusion is a card that is, you know, they've done this ability a lot. They really have. The idea that you get cards, you can cast them, you can play them. Praetor's Grasp was one of them that lets you search through their library and exile it. You can play it. Now this one is different in that it let you cast the spell however you want. I actually think this is going to
How does it let you cast the spell with what mana?
Because it's right there, and you may spend mana as though over any mana of any color to cast that spell.
No, I understand, but you had to pay 5 mana to do
Yeah,
this.
you had to pay, that's the problem. You got to pay a million mana to do that. So like, if this spell were like 3 mana or less, it could actually be really powerful.
You tricked me with Reap Intellect. I swear to God, the first FNM that I got to play with Dragon Maze, I had Reap Intellect in my sideboard. I was like, this card is insane. It's so good. You're not getting me with this card.
Nope.
I'm not touching this.
Nope, sorry. And EDH, I actually think it's an all-star.
Is it?
I think Commander players are going to love the crap out
Oh,
of
because
this
they
thing.
have so much infinite mana.
Yeah, they have infinite mana. Everyone has all these really cool spells, and late in the game,
All
they
this
have
artifact
a big,
mana?
Yeah, they have a big, huge graveyard that can choose either hand or graveyard. Is actually the key to this card being not complete garbage.
All right, fine. I got it. This is a commander card. I keep forgetting they keep pushing commander cards into
They
the
do, and
sets
honestly,
too,
this is just a pure commander card for me,
Yep.
and that's fine. That's where it lives.
No, it is awesome, yeah.
Hoard the foils, sell them later for lots of money, because EDH players like to pimp it out, and this is one of those spells. It doesn't go anywhere else.
If they want to pimp it out, does that mean you should draw on it too? Like make your own art on it?
All right, so, no, that's funny. However, in Limited, do you ever play this? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just asking.
Shipwreck Singer.
All right, Shipwreck Singer, ladies and gentlemen, is a cool little card. I like this card.
I like it. I like that its second ability is a tap ability because I don't want it to be too aggressive. I don't want it to like resemble Rakdos Guildmage too much. But that's a powerful ability. All creatures get -1/-1, and then you target creatures that have to
Or
attack.
attacking creatures. Because it's not even, so all of your blockers are going to be just as big as they were before, but
Yeah.
all of their guys are going to be all smaller. So like, yeah, that's a very important distinction. And ultimately being able to control combat all by himself, just as a 2-mana 1/2 flyer, is awesome.
It's a big mana sink because you are going to have to like pay multiple times if you want a lot of creature attack. But just making their like ability type creatures have to attack, and then you get to use this ability is pretty sweet. I'm a big fan. Also, it's a flyer, so you can get in some damage early with it, and then once the game gets mucked down and there's a lot of creatures, you can start using it as an ability. So I like it.
I also think the flavor is terrific. Really cool picture, cool flavor text. It all works together. Super nice card. Will be great for you in Limited, not in Constructed. The end. Spellheart Chimera. I've actually seen some people try to make this work in Constructed. I've seen this. I've heard this.
Was his name Conley Woods?
It's possible. But no, I mean, just other people who randomly are just like, oh my god, like, if I, run a bunch of cantrips and fill my graveyard with all these sorceries and instants, blah, 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 this would be a really scary card. And I'm like,
Yeah, no. I think...
Good luck with that.
I think the only way that I'll try to make this work in Standard is if I have it in play and I cast, what's it called? Enter the Infinite and then discard my hand somehow.
Oh, jeez.
That's the only, like, come on, like, what's
I know, it's silly. I mean, if you're able to mill yourself as a way to get him pumped up, a way to run a bunch of cantrips, a way to get him pumped up, it's ultimately a really cool card. I think it's a super cool picture to this, the Rams coming to get you.
Yeah.
Chimera thing with Ram with wings is neat. It allows you to, late in the game, in Limited, I think it could legitimately be a 4 or 5/3 flyer with trample.
You gotta work pretty hard, but sure.
You gotta work really hard, actually,
Yeah.
now that I think about it, because we're talking 23 spells, 6 of them are maybe going to be your instants or sorceries, but there's going to be so many enchantments in there. It sucks. Look, we worked it out. It's Terabad. Boop. Steam Augury is not Terabad. This card is sweet.
Yes. My favorite name for it is Fiction or Fact. I just love that name. Thank you, Chapin. It's genius.
There's Fiction or Fact. I've seen Fact or Friction. I've seen a whole bunch of ways to talk about this card. I didn't actually get to talk about it on the show, so I'm really excited to talk about it. I love this card. I think it's incredibly powerful. I think they really pushed it. I do think it's supposed to be rare. These types of effects are rare these days, and I love the mind games that this card gives you. I think Fact or Fiction is too good to reprint. I think this card is absolutely perfect. I love the mind games around this card. I love when you are needing a Supreme Verdict. Normally what happens in Fact or Fiction is you need a card. You need a specific thing. You need a creature, you need an answer, you need something to gain you life, you need whatever it is.
And you get that card no matter what.
Yes, but here's the opposite. Here's the mind game. I need a Supreme Verdict really, really bad. Like you have a bunch of guys. I got no board. I'm dead next turn. I steam Augury at the end of your turn. I turn up Supreme Verdict and 4 of the cards. And I snap Supreme Verdict 4 of the cards. And you give me the 4 of the cards, obviously, not knowing I have a Supreme Verdict in my hand. And then I just wreck you. And I got to draw 4 cards from 4 mana thanks to this guy. And I got to totally mind trick you and probably put you on tilt. Card's sick. I love it. I think
I think like there's a lot of mind games. The only thing I dislike about it has nothing to do. It's not a real complaint. It's just like I don't like it living in a world with Jace because like you have both different types of fact or fiction type abilities. It's like now this time, like think about explaining to a new player at F&M. Like now this time you pick these 3 cards and you put them into piles, and then I'm gonna pick a pile. But now I put them into piles, and now you pick. This kid's gonna be like, I just want a giant growth my elf. Like
I just want to do the things, turn them sideways. No, it's fine. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's brilliant. I love it. I think it's the best way to bring back fact or fiction without being fact or fiction, and still have a lot of really cool mind games attached to it.
Whenever people ask me like, would you reprint fact or fiction, like my answer was no, just because I don't like those really hard decisions. Like Jace is fine because it's only 3 cards. All you got to do is put 1 here and 2 here. That's not that tough. But once you get to 5, the options are just magnified so much, and it's just too much to put on someone else. You should never have like the decisions of a card should never be on your opponent. Like they shouldn't have to make all the decisions.
Well, I mean, and sometimes you want that because they make really poor decisions.
Well, that's what I mean. It's unfair.
Right. And that's sort of what this card still does, but just not to that same degree.
Yep.
And then lastly, we now know that Karanos is the name of the blue-red god.
Sure, yeah.
Which is cool. Karanos, neat. Steam Augury, super amazing. Going into my cube, I can't wait to play with it. It's brilliant. Fleet Feather Sandals, super flavorful, super bad. Not super bad.
No, this is actually, I think this card will be good and limited.
What was the one? I think it was in World Wake. There was like a 2-mana artifact, and it was a 2-mana equipment, and equip 2, and it gave him flying.
Flying, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not plays.
Yeah, and that's actually
Cobbled Wings or something?
Something like that, yeah. As soon as I said that, I was like, oh my god, I remember Cobbled Wings and how that was actually a really good card.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, it's bad.
Haste is a huge ability. It's, along with flying, like, this is a scary card to just be in play. Now, this is like one of those cards you don't want to spend a lot of time in the early game investing into, but if you ever just have extra mana to get it into play, once it's in play, like, it's scary for an opponent, especially if the game goes late. Like, just giving something flying and haste, like, that means that if there's a creature in play that you just want to have flying, that's the turn you invest mana into. Or simply just the top of your deck can just kill your opponent at any time.
I was wrong. There's just no 2 ways about it.
I played this card.
I read it and I judged it far too quickly. I remember Cobbled Wings. I remember the ability to give haste when you just top deck anything and you just slam it down, you attach the sandals and you go. It gives evasion to your best fatty. Like, it's not a card you want to run multiples of. If you get multiples of it, don't.
Yeah, just play one.
Just play one in your limited decks, but it's actually going to be really sweet.
But you need both sandals.
You need 2 pair.
Or you're just going to be like that Hercules cartoon where he just flies around with one sandal one time.
Okay. But yeah, seriously, not that bad in limited at all. Not an all-star, not something you pick early. Something you're probably going to either get passed out or pick really late. But in draft, not as good as in sealed, as these cards generally are. But should be fine regardless.
Yep.
Guardians of Meletis. One of the coolest Magic cards, not because it does anything neat, because it don't, but because it is the first same-sex relationship ever referenced on a Magic card.
That's pretty cool.
Which I think is really sweet. So high five Wizards, I'll high five them.
I want Jellyfish this time.
Thanks.
I really wanted to.
You do. Now I bet you do every time now, don't you? Every time somebody tries to high five, you're like, do I have Jellyfish? Do I have Jellyfish? Do I have Jellyfish?
I can't Jellyfish on this one because then like the people will be like, oh my.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. The idea of the, history speaking of 2 feuding rulers, obviously this is 2 guys, and in truth they were peaceful lovers. Like, that's really cool. First time Magic's done there. Go equality.
It's really cool that like gaming is pushing equality. Like, and it's a brave thing to do. Like,
they didn't have to. You know what I mean? They really didn't. They didn't have to publish that at all. They could have just quietly made this a 3-mana
they make up their own stories.
Like. Right. They decide what's on these cards. So I think that's really cool. Go Wizards. Well done. We're all proud of you. Moving on. Wait. 2 seconds. The card, not very good.
No.
Just bad. That's okay. Cool flavor text, cool story. Which is I, super flavorful, super neat, bad, better on something that's like the 1/4, the Triton that's 1/4, that you don't really want to always attack with. It's something you want to keep this on a blocker. You want to keep this on a defender if you have any, on the yoked ox or whatever, where you're able to just sit back and just scry one at the end of their turn over and over and over again. The fact you have to keep mana into it's kind of eh.
Yeah, I mean, you have to give some investment to get the Witch's Eye.
I guess. I mean, jeez.
You can't just see the future for free, my friend. You've seen all the tales. Come on.
Yeah, you got to pay the man. But ultimately, pretty neat. I mean, like, pretty flavorful. Super flavorful card. Not very powerful. You really shouldn't be running it unless you absolutely have to. I don't want to play this card in Limited.
Yeah, I don't think it's that good.
Because almost anything that you're going to replace it with, even another defender, is at least going to block something.
At the cost of one card, you never have a bad draw step, right? Like, you never... Well, you will, I guess, if you draw 2 lands in a row.
Which is definitely possible.
Yeah,
and you don't want to end of your turn scry, my upkeep scry. Which you could if you're dying to find something, but
I don't know, man.
We're already trying too hard. Ultimately, Unknown Shores.
Why did they have to change the name of one of my favorite cards?
Because we don't want to go back to the Grotto.
Come on, Shimmering Grotto Wizards. This is my boy.
Reprint.
I've played this card in way too many tournaments.
And now you can play another one with a whole new name.
Well, they're both in standard too.
You can play 8 of them. There you go.
Yeah.
Woo!
Not enough mana accelerants to do that.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think it's actually is very powerful in that a lot of the really good cards that we've been talking about and hyping are actually just one color needed,
Yeah.
One blue whatever for the bestow cost of this and for the casting cost of that, It's
so
not a lot of double mana.
Well, the thing about like Shimmering Grotto and Unknown Shores that I have is it's not a good mana fixer for a splash. And now I think I should just probably at this point write an entire article about why. But like no one really gets it, and like Todd disagrees with me all the time, is like, this does not fix your splash. So let's just say we have a fireball. No, I don't want to be a fireball. I want it to not be an X-Spell. Some kind of splash card.
Think of the bestowed nymph, the blue Windrake nymph thing.
Yeah, sure. So they were splashing that card.
Right.
So what happens is if we use this instead of just islands, yes, it's going to help us cast our cards that we actually have to cast, but there's a good chance that we're playing like the flyer that costs double white. So then now this doesn't really splash for that. And we're going to want to on-curve all of our green and blue cards. So our splash tends to be a card like a removal spell. So once we get to that removal spell, this is going to like cost extra mana, but everything else is so off-curve because of the Unknown Shores anyway. It should just be the mana cost. It should just be the swamp or be the island. And I go by that because like cards, I just don't like these in Limited at all. And now I would like this if I have a double splash and it actually can be a dual land. But like, it's not a good dual land when you're just trying to curve out into a splash card.
I mean, I wouldn't call it a dual land. I would call it something that requires a little work. I would say it slows you down. If you try to use it for your splash, it will not be on curve. It will likely be late. But a lot of times that's not the end of the world.
Well,
it's not terrible.
Okay, so what I'm mostly saying is, if your other cards don't go on curve, then it might as well be a swamp anyway. Because like, if you're casting your 2/2 flyer on turn 4, you're probably losing that game. So you need the actual investment of like the planes. Like if your deck doesn't have enough planes, like 9 planes to play your 2 double white card, you can't cut a planes for an Unknown Shores because you're still not going to cast that card on time.
Right, I mean, but are you really saying that if you got, let's say, 2 Unknown Shores in your sealed pool, that you would not play them?
Sealed is a little bit different than draft.
Fair.
I do think that these are playable in sealed, but it's not something I tend to want to play, and that's for that example is I'm not going to play a double white 2/2 flyer on turn 3 unless I'm playing 9 planes in my deck. That's the lowest I'll go for double white or double colored 3-drops. You just need 9 planes. And I'm not going to cut one of them for an Unknown Shores and say I have 9 white sources because I don't have 9 white sources. I have 8 white sources and one that can happen later on in the game.
Interesting. I find that I agree they're not that great in Limited, in draft. They're way better in sealed. But they also help sort of shore up the double white cost, the double blue cost, the double green cost. It was a subliminal hit. But seriously, ultimately not an all-star, but still a fine card. Not a card you first pick in draft. I think it goes like pretty late, honestly.
I mean, they rarely see play in draft anymore, just because you have to play like 1-color, 2-color decks. Like you can't be too unfocused.
Right, and if you are, you sort of suffer for it. But he is super great in sealed. You will find a lot of value out of it. You know, keeping your mana costs in check.
Yep.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the blue card set review. No, there's no more until tomorrow. No. But we will be here tomorrow. We will be talking about all the black cards in Theros, which will be sweet.
Yes.
I'm excited to talk about Mr. Erebos and his whip. Will be totally sweet. And so, for Evan Irwin,
I'm Brad Nelson.
he is all day, and we're tapping the cards.
So you don't have to.
See you tomorrow. Jellyfish.